Dark Satellite Media.
A nameless evil, once buried forever. Now he's awake and he's ready for terror. But hold up, wait, there's a catch. This kid Mimi has a plan to hatch. With the magic gem, she has the power. The monster's her friend, it's her finest hour. They'll go on adventures, cause all kinds of trouble. Blow up the world and dance on the rubble. First he needs a name, something cool, it can't be lame. That's when it struck her, so cool and so mean. The monster would be named PG.
Hey, Steven, how are you?
Good, how are you?
So amazed to talk to you. Huge fan. Podcast is called Red River Podcast. I guess we're going to talk about Psycho Goreman and just how it was one of the most anticipated movies for me personally. I remember
wow.
Yeah, I remember hearing about it last year. And my relationship with you started, I went to a screening of Father's Day in New York City. So ever since then, I've just been a fan and I followed your work.
Oh, wow, awesome.
So got a chance to watch this movie this year, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And what I realized is 10 years ago, 20 years ago, people were still so hung up on the 80s. And, I'm of that age, so I grew up in that age as well. But I like what you're doing, especially for something like Psycho Goreman, where I feel like we're kind of moving a little bit of that influence. And I feel like a lot of the stuff in the 90s that I loved is kind of the stuff that you love as well. I mean, am I wrong on that?
Oh, no, you're definitely right on that. Like, I made a conscious decision with this movie to have it feel more like a 90s, like, kids' adventure film. Like, the 80s influences are still there.
Absolutely.
But, like, just in terms of, like, visually, like, the look of the movie, I wanted it to have more of a cinematic look in the way that movies in the 90s had. Like, I remember as a kid always thinking that 90s movies looked so polished compared to 80s films. So it was part of the reason why we shot it in anamorphic. I mean, I know people automatically will default to, like, John Carpenter for that look.
Sure.
But really, to me, I felt like everything in the 90s, like every big movie would go that route and be shot anamorphic. And it just gave it such a cinematic quality that I thought it fit the film really well. It's like, I feel like the movie is very much like an early 90s movie that still has some of the kind of like runoff from the 80s in it. Like in the way that something like Ninja Turtles or Ninja Turtles 2 or like Guyver has that vibe, where it's like right on the cusp of the 90s, but still feels like the 80s in a lot of ways.
So good call on Guyver, because I wrote that down. So recently I had on one of my favorite 90s direct-to-video dudes, Brian Usna.
Oh, nice.
Oh, he's like, he's like a god to me for sure. And when I saw Psycho Goreman, I just like, as far as like the actual, the costume, it was very like, I thought it was like Guyver meets like Wishmaster, so like I love that 90s era like direct to video stuff. And it's funny that you say that that's what you went for, because in the very beginning, like the kids are playing and they're not like on a computer, they're not on their phone, they're outside playing like a physical game, and from there, like once a solo, like the guitar solo rips in, I'm like, this is like so cool, and I knew right away that it was going to be something like just something different. I feel like this movie might be like your most accessible. Could I say that?
Yeah, it's weird because it's like somehow my most accessible and my most polarizing at the same time, which it's crazy to me that as mild-mannered a person as I am, that I have the potential to make a movie that would infuriate a certain group of people as much as this movie has. But I mean, I hope it just means that this movie is, it'll like have some legs because it's prompting a discussion and not just kind of like, people like it and then they forget about it. Like, it seems like it's like whipping people up into a frenzy, whether it's like loving it or hating it.
Oh, so really? What kind of frenzy? Like, did I miss something? What kind of frenzy are we talking about?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I feel like a lot of people are bumping on certain moments in the film, specifically a moment relating to a cross being broken.
Okay.
But other than that, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think just maybe the direction of the movie and the kind of like lack of morals that the movie maybe presents.
Absolutely. That's the best
people
part.
seem to bump on that.
Yeah,
well,
for people like us.
Exactly.
For people, like, because I know where it's coming from, and you know, like it's like this movie that's kind of like absurd. It's just ridiculous. Like when you really, it's not. There's nothing serious about it, kind of. So I love that.
There's nothing to take away from it that's super serious. So anybody who gets offended or put off by anything happening in it, it's like, maybe like chill out a little bit, because like maybe you're throwing a little too much energy at your media that you're consuming. Because I feel like it's overall like a pretty inoffensive, low impact movie that just has a lot of absurdity, but I feel like it's like on the level of like a classic Simpsons episode is what I was hoping for in terms of just the insanity on display. So
it's
I mean,
dynamic of the siblings, like Luke is like so kind of like innocent, and like Mimi is just like a madman. Like I love that, because it's like, so kids in movies for the most part, especially movies that tend to go towards horror, sometimes they sometimes they never really come off great. I always think of Halloween 5 with like the kid who stutters, and I'm like, oh my god, enough with this kid. But these two kids were like, they were so great, and their dynamic with Psycho Goreman is just like, all three of them have these really over the top personalities, and they exist in this world that is just so fucking beyond anything that anyone could comprehend, and I love that dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, I went into it with the intention of having kid characters that were not your stock like innocence. Like I've been calling it the Harry Potter syndrome, where kids in movies are just like wide-eyed, like watching the plot kind of like happen around them. And it just seems so boring to me to do something like that. So I figured, like, for this story to have energy and personality, like, we needed kid characters that could stand up to an evil space warlord man. Mimi needed to be somebody that could go toe to toe with PG, and I wanted to believe that, whether like for better or for worse. So I didn't want her to also be like this like angelic character that had a strong personality but could do no wrong. Like I wanted her to be abrasive, because I thought that was more interesting. Like I wanted a character that maybe you didn't always like, but still like enjoyed and appreciated despite their flaws.
Absolutely, and the one in particular, like in the very beginning scene where, they're digging that hole, and then they go to, they go home, and Luke is like, I think we woke Grandma up, and I love that Mimi is like, I told you, they're doing the Morse code, and she's like, I told you, Grandma's in hell, and it's just something that subtle, but it goes, like, you already know in the very beginning that Mimi is just like no joke,
Yeah, exactly, and I wanted to have like kind of throwaway lines like that to build the universe and this idea that Mimi exists in her own weird world. And I think that's more true to being a kid. Like my memories of being a kid are definitely like just living in my own weird microcosm, devoid of any consequence. And I wanted to show kids that we're kind of in that same mind frame, and that weren't just like the pure-hearted innocence that we typically get in genre films. Like I wanted them to be little maniacs that lived in their own little maniac world playing their nonsense dodgeball games, because that just seems more true to life to me.
Yeah, and what was am I wrong to think that there was kind of like a BioCop cameo in the movie?
Oh yeah, that's BioCop.
Okay.
Like in the credits, he's credited as BioCop. I mean, I think on the IMDb he's called Zombie Cop, because that's what we had in the script. Because I didn't want to like put it out there right away. I wanted people to discover it and be like, wait a second, is BioCop in this movie? And it's like a low key BioCop origin story.
It's so good. It's just like for fans of your work. It's like those little things that definitely, like those nuggets are for us for sure.
Well, I'm trying to build up the Steve Kostanski cinematic universe a little bit. I want all these things to like cross over with one another and tie into each other in weird nonsense ways. And so that's step one for me.
And another thing, there's two things actually. Anytime I see PG on any movie that's supposed to, because I'm like 43, so I'm like, like sometimes like a horror movie comes out and it's PG-13. Like to me, I automatically, I'm like, oh, like yesterday I watched Coming to America 2, and I'm like, oh, PG-13. I'm like, damn it. So I love that the movie is so not PG, but like that was like what you chose. Was that like a purpose thing?
Oh yeah, like when I was coming up with the idea, it was like my initial core concept was like a mashing of Rawhead Rex and E.T. together, and so
wow.
I wanted a title like kind of in that vein, and so I was, I was thinking like, what's like an abbreviation that hasn't been used that's catchy and will stay in people's minds, and yeah, I just stumbled upon like, well, why not PG, like the rating parental guidance,
So good.
because it's such an easy like thing to piggyback. Like I feel like it almost feels like a like Roger Corman or like Lloyd Kaufman move to take something like that and make it the title of your movie, because now it's forever going to be associated with that. So yeah, once I realized that, I was like, oh my God, why has nobody done this before? I got to jump on this.
Well done.
Yeah, but
well done.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
another thing that I love, just like I haven't heard a rap song like this. Like I think of Maniac Cop 2, because at the end of Maniac Cop 2,
Of course,
there was a Maniac Cop, right? So I'm like listening at the end, and PG has his own rap.
Yeah, well, that was a must. Like I had to have that because it's such a staple of that era of movie. And like Waxwork 2 has a great one at the end of it. Obviously, Ninja Rap in Ninja Turtles 2, and Turtle Power in the first Ninja Turtles is a great song too. Like there's just so many great songs, and I'm a like strong advocate of like ending on a high note with your movie. Like I want, back when I was imagining this playing in theaters and people watching it in a theater, like I want people like walking out of the theater to this song and just being on the high of like this crazy rap song. This seems so funny to me. So that's why, I had a hard commit to it. And Blitz Berlin, the composers, knocked it out of the park, like with the score across the board, but especially with that rap song. It's honestly like one of my favorite things about the movie. It's just the fact that that song exists.
Yeah, so for a guy like you, like seriously, like I just admire your filmmaking, because it's like, aside from your effects work on even random movies like Girl House, which I loved, like I feel like you are making movies specifically for people like me, and I just can't thank you enough. Like as soon as I see an Astron 6 or Steve Kostanski, anywhere attached to the film, I just like watch it, and it's just, man, I can't say enough about your filmmaking. I think The Void.
Oh, thank you very much.
I think The Void is one of the greatest horror movies of the last 10 years, 15 maybe. Like it's just
thank you.
Unbelievable movie. You made Leprechaun, which I don't even like the series, and I thought that was the best one.
Well, yeah, you're preaching to the choir on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say I'm a fan of Leprechaun 3. I have fond memories of watching that as a kid, renting it from Video Plus on VHS.
Is that the casino?
So my whole intent, that's the Vegas one, and my whole intention with it was like, just at the bare minimum, like make a movie that feels like that time you watched Leprechaun 3. So I just I threw everything I had at it to try and make the perfect, like straight to video in the 90s Leprechaun movie. I just wanted to emulate that experience. So I'm glad that you got something out of it.
For sure. It's like that's my air. Like I love that. Like I said, like I had Brian Usna on, and I'm like, yo, you made The Dentist. You made Return of the Living Dead 3. I'm like, I felt like Chris Farley. I'm just like, yo, I'm like, but you made, like it was such a. He talked for like 2 hours, and I fucking loved it. So cool.
He's awesome.
Yeah, man. He just like. There was something about those effects, and I feel like you're keeping that vibe alive. I know that you're a child, like you're a video store guy. I know how influential Freddy's Dead was, like the poster, like every interview. I know you're. I know you're a Beekler fan, so everything that you do, man. I guess unfortunately that looks like all the time I have. I don't really want to piss Tatum off. But thank you. I'm going to put this at the end. Like we're going to talk about your movies, and then I'll put this little piece at the end of our episode. So
Okay, cool.
thank you so much, man. I look forward to everything else that you do, and I will spread the word about PG, and people will love it.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. It was nice talking to you. And yeah, if you want to do this again in a longer form down the road sometime, I'd be all for it.
Hey. Ooh la la, ah wee wee. Ooh la la, ah wee wee. Hey. Ooh la la, ah wee wee. Hey. Ooh la la, ah wee wee. 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 Ooh la la.
Holy moly! What's up,
Hello.
Hello. Hey, guys.
What's happening?
Oh, not a lot. What's up with you?
Steve? Oh, you know, just living our best pandemic life on Long Island somewhere.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I just realized after talking to you, first of all, hey, Steve Kostanski, what's going on? How are you? Welcome to Red River. Welcome to Red River Podcast, where we talk music, movies, and pop culture.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for
course.
it really
Yeah.
started with that junket you were doing, right? You were doing like a press thing, and we did those 15 minutes. Do you remember that?
In retrospect, they probably should have given everybody more time. The 15-minute thing is not enough to really have a combo. So
I just figured, I'm like, okay, how am I going to cram everything that I want to talk to him about? But we were just lucky to have those 15 minutes. And then the whole time I was talking to the other guys, I was like, can you imagine the amount of questions that he's answered? Like by the time he gets to us,
Oh, yeah.
I've answered the same 5 or 6 things 1,000 times now. So
yeah. And when you do something like that, is it are there actual fans like we are, or is it just anyone that does press?
oh, it's the whole range. There's people that are fans and are super nice, and then there's people that are clearly they got tasked with doing this.
Yeah.
Have no clue
Yeah.
who I am or what I've done, and didn't really do their research, or just I didn't see the movie, but I watched the trailer. It looks real wacky. Where do you come up with these wacky? It's all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's exactly. I mean, but that's that part for the course, I would imagine. Anytime you make something like that. So, but I want to just intro you real quick because you are someone who we feel really pushes the culture forward. You're like a Greg Nicotero and a Tom Savini, you know, for yeah, man, you as soon as I see your name attached to it or the Astron 6 guys attached to it, I feel like no matter what, that's a stamp that we just have to watch. We have to see what this is all about, because you make stuff. I mean, granted, PG, what we're talking about mostly today is so accessible that maybe it goes beyond that. But everything that you've done before that, everything that you've put your hands on is just, it's done with so much fucking love that we celebrate your work and the stamp that you give to everything. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for that. I mean, yeah, I myself and then everybody at Astron 6 as well. We love our craft. We love making movies and telling stories. And yeah, I mean, my goal is just to throw everything I have at every project I do, because I have the attitude of if you're not putting everything you have into your art, then you're not really making art. So yeah, it's all about giving everything you got and doing 110% all the time. So
yeah, as fans, we all we're coming from a musician. Brian used to play in a band. I still play in a band. We absorb our inspirations, everyone does, and then from there, it's how you filter it out, basically. So we take in all this stuff, and just when I watch all the stuff that you do, it's your own thing. But I feel sometimes I'll be oh man, that's such a Hen and Lauder thing, or something like that, where it's these inspirations just come through. But it's man, it's you know you know when it's like a Kostanski or like Astron 6 thing. But let's just talk about PG real quick, Psycho Goreman, because I feel like the promotion for this, more than anything that I've ever noticed, I feel like the movie is going very well for you guys. Am I crazy?
Well, I think we're definitely throwing everything we have at pushing this movie on people in a way that I don't think really happens with movies anymore. And that was our intention from the beginning, was to make a movie that like the marketing and all the stuff orbiting around the movie was as much a part of the story as the movie itself. And so, yeah, we went in with a conscious plan of being like, we're going to push to have toys and like a knockoff Happy Meal type thing. And like all this stuff that used to be around movies and used to just like breathe life into stuff in a way that you don't really get right now, as a way of just like taking fans back to a more idyllic era of movie watching, in my opinion. Because I don't know about you guys, but I used to love that, like, you wouldn't just go see the movie at the theater or rent it on home video. It's like you go to McDonald's and get the collector's glasses and then go buy the action figures and read the comics and see an ad for the video game. It's like it became an all-consuming thing. And so, as obnoxious as it is at times, we like wanted to do that with PG and just be like, we're just going to hammer people with this thing. Because that's really like such a key component to the life cycle of a movie and to a movie's personality to me. So we want to have that.
Especially something that I know takes a while, you know, like you know, bands will make a record that might take a couple of months to make. I know that you've been working on PG for so long, and you're right. Like the cycle of that, like when we were kids, we would go to McDonald's and they would have like, you know, the Happy Meal and all that other stuff. And then it's like, oh shit, look, there's a Star Wars, like, you know, Atari game. And then from there, it's just this thing. It's like this like snowball that keeps going until like it's ingrained. And you got to think, like, if a movie like Star Wars came out today, it would be out on HBO Max, and maybe 2 weeks later, people would forget about it.
Or they're like trying to do that stuff, but it's so big that like you can't escape the life cycle of these giant movies, which are like they happen very quickly and then they disappear. And unfortunately, a lot of times the discussion is about what's wrong with the giant movie, not like, hey, we love it, we want more of it. It's more like, what was up with Rise of Skywalker? I don't want to buy toys for that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the movies themselves aren't filled with the kind of passion that they used to be to justify that kind of marketing to go around it. So
can I ask you, so you, because I'm one of those guys, like I loved The Force Awakens and I really liked The Last Jedi, and I thought Rise of Skywalker was good. Do you not feel that way, or like not so much? I mean,
I liked maybe like the first half of Force Awakens, and I thought it kind of went off the rails. I liked The Last Jedi when I saw it in the theater, and I saw it twice, and both times I was like, yeah, it was great. Why are people complaining about this movie? Then I watched it at home and was, on more than anything, was just kind of like bored. Like, which could have also been a symptom of watching it twice already. But I just wasn't feeling it on that third watch through. And then Rise of Skywalker, I saw it in the theater. It just felt like I was being bombarded with like 6 movies stacked on top of each other.
Onto one,
in a fun way. So I was not into it in the theater, and then I watched it at home, and I still wasn't into it. It felt very like slapped together to me.
Do you think like
takes on new Star Wars trilogy?
Do you think? Yeah, believe me, I'm in the minority. I know. Do you think it's also like impossible to create something for people like us that grew up with the originals that would please us, or do you think it's possible?
I mean, my attitude is like make new things that have the spirit of the things that you used to like. Because I mean, that's really what Star Wars was he wanted, like George wanted to make Flash Gordon and he couldn't, so he made Star Wars instead. Yeah. So like, I don't know, I like want filmmakers to do things like that where it's like a new thing. Okay. It's like clearly something that, you know, was like a Star, like clearly comes from the lineage of like a Star Wars or a Star Trek or something, but I guess I guess the closest example right now would maybe be the Orville, which I haven't watched, where it's like clearly Seth MacFarlane like loves TNG and wanted to make his own TNG show, so that's what he made. So I feel like I have more respect for that, like, or maybe not more, just that's the thing that excites me the most is when people are like, I'm making a thing, it's an original thing, but it's clearly like it's I grew up on all these things that have inspired this new thing. So
gotcha.
Yeah, I think it's tough, especially with like Star Wars. Like the mythology of these things is so big at this point that like how do you manage that, and how do you keep everyone satisfied? Like it's tough.
And the thing
You
with
never will.
You never will. And the thing with now is like it's so easy to just push your opinion online. So it's like people who would not spend a dime to see these fucking movies anyway, now will still push their opinion. You know, like to me, it's like when we were talking about Coming to America too, I'm thinking like, all right, I watched it. They made a PG-13 movie, whatever. I would have gone to see it first week had it been in the movie theaters. So like, I always feel like weird. It's like, why get online and bash something that you probably wouldn't have supported in the first place?
Well, I feel like online criticism culture is such a like parasitic thing at this point that so many people like use it purely as a mode of self-promotion and not actually like, I love movies, I want to talk about movies, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like no matter what you make, somebody's going to come out with an opinion dumping on it just to like get clicks and likes. So yeah, I don't have a ton of respect for that world right now.
Yeah,
even though I've had a movie that's been successful like critically and seems to have like an audience, I still am just generally annoyed by like so many people's like livelihoods seem to ride on people like me busting their asses to make a thing just so they can be like, here is 7 out of 10, watch my video, you know? Like like is it like, what's the thing that's actually, I don't know, it just makes you feel like, what am I making it for at a certain point? That you're making me at my darkest moments where I think I enjoy
you're making it for us.
Yeah, I love making movies. And like I would be making them even if they had no audience at all. I'd just be making them for myself. So yeah, it's not gonna like stop my output of telling stories and making films, but it certainly is an irritating culture that we're in right now as far as movie criticism goes.
I embrace a lot of things because back then we didn't have access to so many things. We had like 3 channels, and every now and then you would rent something on TV, you know, on at your video store. But even to like take something like you know, the criticism that like a show like Creepshow on Shudder was getting, it's like, oh, you know, blah blah blah. I'm thinking like, yo, we have a fucking show that's called Creepshow, and we're getting 2 episodes every week. Like, what the fuck are you complaining about? Like, look at the content that we get. Like, if you don't like it, just be like, oh, I don't even say anything. Just wait for the next week, and maybe you'll like those 2, you know? So it's like, we're getting a fucking Creepshow TV show with Nicotero fucking having his hands on it. Like, it's like, this is like the golden age. What are you doing? You know?
Yeah.
People like to complain, you know?
Well, yeah, that's all they want to do in a lot of cases. One example that pops into my head is like the fact that we had 3 seasons of an Evil Dead show, which is like equivalent to how many movies, like Evil Dead 4s that fans have been clamoring for. And yeah, I mean, I certainly have some strong opinions about that show, but occasionally I like stop myself and go like, there's like a Evil Dead show with Bruce Campbell that's like a continuation of the movies. It's like I think on that show, and even though I have issues with it, like I try to focus on the bright spots that are good, because it's like I got a bunch of good Evil Dead moments out of that show.
Yeah,
which is a thing that like 10 years ago would have been unheard of. I would have been like, yeah, this never happened.
Unheard of. And season 2, the morgue episode where his head goes into the butt and he's getting like, I mean, like there are some scenes in that show that are just unbelievably fucking funny. Like I don't know what the gripes are, you know, but obviously, you know, we could always pick on gripes, but like you said, it's just like we have this Evil Dead show. They gave us 3 seasons. It was amazing. and it's a complete continuation. Like that's so unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, I think that two-parter about his car getting possessed, like that to me is a good enough Evil Dead 4, in my opinion. Like that,
Yeah.
that is
Yes.
that arc of story is satisfying enough that regardless of what I think about anything else in the show, it's like I'm glad I watched those at least. Like I'm glad those exist, and I'll probably revisit those episodes as like a movie in themselves.
So there's a lot of humor in PG, and even I know you guys did a mock-up of the House Guest movie poster, which I thought was fucking brilliant. I don't know who came up with that, but it's the House Guest movie with Phil Hartman and Sinbad. Now, just out of curiosity, because I'm sure no one ever asked you this, like because I know that there's a lot of like humor in like a lot of the stuff that you guys do as a team or by yourself. Like, what are some of the comedies that inspired you growing up or that you remember the most growing up in Winnipeg, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big Simpsons head. Like the first 10 seasons have a real serious influence on my kind of like comedy stylings. And I think the first Ghostbusters is a big influence on me too. That to me is like just a perfect comedy and just a perfect movie across the board. Like it balances all the things you want in a fun movie so perfectly that it's like it's a template for like just how to make a great blockbuster. I don't know if anyone will ever be able to reach the heights of that movie ever again because it's such a lightning in a bottle scenario. But yeah, growing up, I watched it obsessively, and it's one of those movies that grows with you. Like as a kid, you latch onto certain things, and as a grown up, you find those moments of adult humor that didn't land when you were a kid, and it becomes funny in a whole new way revisiting it. So I think Ghostbusters is one of the big influences. And I mean also like Leslie Nielsen comedies like Airplane, Naked Gun, that kind of stuff I watched a lot as a kid. So that kind of like slapstick humor.
It's like Machine Gun. It's like Machine Gun humor where it's like that's how The Simpsons was. And that's why I like a show like Scrubs, certain shows like that where it's like by the time you get past a minute of the show, there's already like 10 jokes and maybe you caught 6 of them.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
I think like Community, at least the seasons of Community that I watched, and then Parks and Rec were about as close to Simpsons as I got in terms of like the amount of laughter the show got out of me, because it does that thing of like stacking jokes. So like you have a punchline and then there's like a punchline on that punchline, and there's
that
trickle down effect where it just keeps going, which I think is something all the good comedies do. They don't just end with one joke. It's like a Russian nesting doll of jokes.
Going on to I think I asked you, like, you know, is it possible to make something old new with a new director? So the dude who made Cell Block in '99, like what was that, Craig Zahler or whatever? Yeah, so he writes Puppet Master, like the last one, The Littlest Reich, and I think that is the best Puppet Master out of all of them. But then you do the same thing with Leprechaun, like there's Leprechaun 1, there's the Casino 1, which I think is 3, who the dude that did BMX Bandits did, and then you come out and you make something from that source material, but somehow you made it better than all the other entries. Like, can you just tell us how Leprechaun Returns came about?
Well, I was in the shop at Masters Effects working one day back in like it was 2017, and Zane, our shop coordinator, came in and was like, "Oh, like we might be doing effects for a new Leprechaun movie. I just got sent the script." And I was like, "Oh, that'll be fun. Like I'll make some gags for a Leprechaun movie." That's absurd.
Yeah.
That night I get home and I have an email from my manager being like, "Hey, do you want to direct a Leprechaun movie?" And I was like, "Do I want to just make effects for a movie and like be at the mercy of some other director who maybe doesn't know what to do with this kind of material, or do I want to call the shots on this?" And it just seemed like such an absurd opportunity that seems so wrong on paper in so many ways that I was like, I kind of just want to do this as a challenge. It motivates a lot of my filmmaking decisions, because I like no-win situations, and making the like 8th movie in a franchise that's like pretty low tier on the horror franchise list.
Yeah. It's so true though. You're right. Like it's like you're the eighth movie. You're like it's almost like when we had Usna on, Brian Usna, and he's making the fourth Silent Night Deadly Night sequel. He's like, oh fuck it, why not?
Yeah, exactly. It also, like, there's the combination of anxiety of, you know, being crushed under the weight of a franchise, but then also the fuck it attitude of like, it's the eighth Leprechaun movie.
Yeah.
As long as I make it fun, that's all that really matters. So I tried to just embrace the spirit of making a movie almost like it was being made in the 90s, making a straight to video era movie where, thinking back on when I would watch those movies, it was like, does it move at a good pace? Are there tons of gags? Like, how is the creature cool? Like, those were kind of like, those are the boxes that need to be checked when I was watching stuff as a teenager to like keep me engaged and satisfied. So with Leprechaun, the first thing I did was I took that script and added like 5 or 6 more effects. I like set this mandate of like, I want the Leprechaun to get wrecked through the whole movie. I wanted to do a bit of a Terminator thing where he keeps getting like gored up a little bit more throughout the film, just to show a progression, because I'm a big fan of like villains whose look evolves through the movie. So yeah, I wanted his like eye to get impaled, and then he swaps out his eye for like another guy's eye for Ozzy's eye he takes. He gets messed up in a bunch of ways. His head gets knocked off.
He peels his own face off.
He rips his face off. Yeah, just a bunch of like random gags that I threw in, which, I mean,
the kills in that movie are
so
fantastic.
Good, right? Yeah,
that's what takes it over the top for me. Like, and all the gore you do, like your effects or in a film you're directing, it's fun. There's some, and a non-horror fan wouldn't understand that, you know, how gore could be fun, but like there's just something about the way you do it, you know.
Well, like
I was going to say, and the two 90s things that I want to mention from that movie, Ed Begley Jr. just randomly mentioned, and Hammer Time, like the Hammer Time scene, which I don't know if it was kind of like a slight homage to the Army of Darkness scene.
Oh yeah,
you know,
what sold me on it was like the Sci-Fi Channel producer, when I was like interviewing with him, he was like, I want to have the kind of tone of like an Army of Darkness.
Nailed it.
Or that like
nailed
silly and light, but still like take the craft seriously and have lots of effects and set pieces and things, and like, you know, like still deliver on the promise of like a fun
and great cast.
Oh yeah,
great cast. Like the cast was like you see, casting is so important, man. Sometimes that shit just takes you out of it. I always reference, you know, the Friday the 13th remake, where I feel like that was the worst casting I've ever seen. I don't know why.
It had that guy from the Transformers, the first Transformers movie, playing like basically the same character. You know?
Yeah. That's always my reference point. But this was a great cast, and then you bring back Mark Holton from the original, which was so cool. And then his death, you know, that's when I knew it was going to be like something special, because his death, when the leprechaun comes out of his body, is just like you see, like, once again, it's just that stamp. It's like, okay, this is Steve's work. This is like, these are the Astron guys.
Bringing back that character was great too, because a lot of the times, like you were saying, when you get to the eighth part of it, as fans of franchises, when we get any kind of continuity, when you give us that, because it's very rare. Like you see, like Friday the 13th, they're like, that happened. No, it didn't. You know, it's just
like, oh, Tommy Doyle's coming back. Cool.
No, I agree with that totally. I thought, like, what are going to be things that actually make people want to watch this movie? And like, they told me in my first interview, they were like, oh yeah, Warwick won't be able to come back. Like, it was a scheduling thing, I'm told. So he like wasn't available. So already I was like, okay, so we don't have the original guy. So if I was just a like casual horror fan observing this thing, that would already be a red flag.
Red flag, yeah.
And so I was like, well, we got to have something tying this in. And so they had written Ozzy into the script, but originally he just died, and that was it. And so I was the one that pushed for this almost like American Werewolf style thing of like he's just
Yes.
a ghost
Yes.
that haunts Lila through
Mm.
the movie. And it also was an excuse for just an added bit of like gross out stuff of him just being nasty and rotten. And it just gave the movie like an extra layer, like a B plot that it didn't have before. And I think a lot of these movies lack that, where once it gets down to like the central conceit of the story of like Leprechaun hunting teenagers and people running around getting murdered, like there isn't much more to it than that. So having Ozzy come back gave it a little bit of substance in a small way.
And
Mhm.
how much did Jennifer Aniston charge you for her voice? I'm kidding.
Uh,
I'm kidding.
What I love is that I had like early on talking about how we're going to pull this off. I asked like, so are you going to like try to get Jennifer Aniston to do this? And they're like, oh yeah, we're in touch with her agent right now. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm sure this is going to pan out.
Let me know how that works.
Yeah, I'm sure she's going to get back to you immediately to jump on. No, we got a voice actor out of LA to do her voice. I thought she did
She did great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because it's like it's a voiceover thing that's tough on two layers. You're doing an impression, but then you're also like having to time it out with Lyndon's mouth movements because she's like imitating, like the leprechaun is imitating Lila's mom.
Yes.
And so it's like doing an impression, but then also matching the mouth movements of another actor was like a double layer of difficulty. So I thought she did a really fantastic job by still maintaining the impression and then also hitting the timing perfectly. So yeah, I was really happy that that worked out.
We talked about a lot of the humorous works and what you put into some of your stuff, but I'd love to get into The Void, which me and Sam, it's one of our favorite horror films.
It's
ever.
one of the greatest horror movies of the last 15 years.
Oh wow,
It's a classic. It's when I describe it to people who don't know, I'm like, this think like Lovecraft, The Thing, Hellraiser, some Cronenberg, maybe
Assault
a little
on
Fulci
Precinct
the
13.
behind, yeah, and throw it in a blender, and it's just. But this is a movie that's very dark and devoid of any kind of humor. I mean, can you talk a little bit about?
Well, I
working
mean, a
on
lot
that?
of that was Jeremy. Like me and Jeremy Gillespie like tag teamed that movie, and I feel like a lot of that like serious darker stuff came from him. And I mean, not to say that I didn't also want to do that, but my instincts always lean in kind of like lighter stuff. But we both committed to wanting to make a serious movie, like an actual scary horror movie, which seemed like a real challenge, as opposed to just leaning into like the shtick that we had already been doing up to that point. Like it was an attempt to be taken seriously as filmmakers, which proved to be an immense challenge in itself, because when you don't have like humor to fall back on, it's like then it just becomes like, you know, is it working or is it not working? Because if there's humor, it's like, oh, if a gag or a sequence isn't like landing as being scary, then you can lean into it being funny and you have like a safety net almost. Whereas with this, it was like, if the scene's not working, it's just not working and that's it. So it was an attempt to like tell a real dark, dread-filled story and actually like make a movie with creatures that was unsettling and scary. So it was a real nightmare to make that film.
The effects, like the practical effects, look like it took forever. Like I mean, these were some serious things, like the strobe light sequence, like when you first see the monster, and then the hell sequence, like the head smasher that had no fucking. Yo,
oh yeah,
that shit was crazy.
Yeah, Bloody Whole Face Man, he's great.
Yes, that was his name.
Me, like that character was like a good example of like Jer's taste and my tastes kind of colliding in a way that worked really well, because like I came up with that idea and like I feel like in anything else it would just be absurd, but in this setting, in this dark setting, it's like very bothersome. And so yeah, I think like that to me is one of the examples of like a moment in that movie that really works and I'm really proud of, because it's a great like show-stopping kind of gag to freak people out. It's the kind of thing that you talk about after you walk out of the movie theater. So yeah, I'm real proud.
the fact that you're going into this world and it's someone who's been banging their head on this piece of whatever the fuck it was for so long that it just like went through their head and they're still going, like that is nightmare fuel. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's some real.
It's like a plane of hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And another thing about that movie that's super heavy, which people, you know, when it comes to, like, I don't have kids. I know Langan, you have a son.
Yep.
But the you
we
know,
haven't watched it together yet. He's only 10.
yeah.
Gonna wait a little bit.
Yeah, when I was 10, I was watching Psychos in Love, so he's way due.
True.
So but child loss is like such a like heavy subject that always like I think it's just such a like dark thing, you know, and the Void really like tackles that, you know, yeah, man, there's something about just like the loss of a child that kind of like makes people go fucking crazy, and it's really focused on a lot of the people in that movie. So I don't know if like the show Them recently I watched on Amazon Prime, amazing, and it's the same thing. It's like they focus on the loss of a child.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we definitely wanted to lean into real world, like relatable dark themes to make the creature stuff and the like hell stuff a little bit more like tangible. Like you always have to root this stuff in something real for it to work. It can't all be like cosmic and fantastical. And so,
Yeah.
like grounding it in like some real trauma always helps with these types of stories.
The triangle imagery, I don't know, like it's so effective, like little things like that, especially like when Daniel, like the sheriff, went out to his car and like everyone starts popping up, like that stuff like worked. And you know what else worked? I don't know if it was intentional, but the lack of like music, like the score was there, but a lot of the movie was like silent. So like
we made a very conscious decision to not have like a Carpenter-esque score through the whole thing. And it's funny, I feel like there were some reviews that were like, this movie doesn't work because it doesn't have like Carpenter synth in it. And it's like, that's not really what we were going for. Like one of our big inspirations was the score to Sicario.
Oh my God, yes.
The very dread-filled score. And yeah, it's like a lot of like just drones and like booming horns, and like it's more about setting a tone and less about like somebody going wild on the keyboard to like keep you engaged. Like I find it's that kind of synthy Carpenter knockoff stuff is, I find it's like an easy band-aid that people can throw onto a scene to be like, this is exciting now because it's got fun music over it. And I don't think it really like adds to the tension or the fear of a scene. So making the score unsettling and not necessarily being like pleasant to your ears. Like I remember Jer arguing like with the sound designer that like in the red room scene, the red chamber with all the patients, where it's like cross-cutting with that and the whole like pregnancy sequence with the scalpel, like going back and forth between those two sequences. The sound designer didn't want to go too loud with that score. And I just remember Joe getting so worked up and being like, no, it's got to be like, we got to like blow out people's speakers with this part because this is peak horrifying. Yeah. It should be like punching you in the face. And I think that's an important thing for a horror score to do at the right moment, is like it needs to amplify the terror and not make it like a pleasant experience, because it shouldn't be. You need to be, the movie's taking,
the viewer should be uncomfortable also.
Yeah, the movie's taking you to a bad place and the music should enhance that and not be like melodic in a way.
Yeah, I know, like a montage, which we all love too. But it's funny that you mentioned Sicario, because that brooding synth on those scenes in Sicario, which is one of the greatest movies ever made. Like in Sicario, the scene where they're at the checkpoint and right, like that I saw that in the theaters by myself. That'll make your butthole tight.
Yeah, that movie is a masterclass in tension. That's for sure.
Yeah,
and I think that's horror enhances all of it. I think it is a really good example of like a perfect marriage between like kind of visual and and score kind of coming together to make a really unsettling experience.
So going back to Psycho Goreman, I know when we first spoke, you said your inspiration or part of it was, part Rawhead Rex and the Guyver. So was Screamin' Mad George like any type of influence on you growing up?
I mean, in regards to movies like Guyver, for sure. I actually didn't see Society until very recently. So I can't necessarily draw upon that one. And watching it recently, I'm like, the work in that is really, really impressive. If I was going to look towards any effects artist, it would be Steve Wang for sure, because just his work as like an effects artist and director, I think is like both really top of the line. Like I love his designs of like the Guyver and Zonoid suits in Guyver 2 specifically. I think really fantastic. His action movie that he did, Drive, with Mark Dacascos, is fantastic. I idolize that guy. I think he is one of the best, and he just has such a cool style, and his sensibilities are so cool. It's like the kind of stuff that I dream of making.
Yeah. So speaking of musical montages, one of my favorite ones ever, we always just recently we were on the podcast group and we were bringing up our favorite, like One Crazy Summer comes to mind, like, because I always watch Demi Moore playing the guitar and she can't play, so she doesn't move her hands. The scene in Police Academy 3 when they're like Hooks and Callahan are singing. But then you get to certain things like the one in Psycho Goreman where they do that song. So like, what do you remember about making that? And how did you, was that something that you just knew that you needed to throw in this movie?
Like having a montage in the movie. Yeah, it felt it was necessary. It would be crazy not to have one. The song, I have to give full credit to the composers at Blitz Berlin, Martin and Dean and Tristan. Like I asked Martin, I was like, I need a song for this, and like we need it in advance of actually shooting the scene so they can have something to kind of play along to and sing along to. And they just like whipped that together super quick and like came up with the lyrics and everything. And I feel like it's such a like anthem for the movie that I think it's a good example of quality work that can come out of having to be rushed and duress. Because I think a lot of this movie was, made at kind of a speedy pace. We didn't have a leisurely pace shooting or like through pre-production or shooting or even post-production. So I'm really happy with like the score and that montage sequence especially I think is super fun. And
I think that's where the movie really like that's like where the movie like turns, and from there it's just like you get thrown into this world of just like insanity, but it's still kind of grounded in reality, which I like. And we also mentioned the first time we spoke about the Maniac Cop 2 rap, so like the fact that Psycho Goreman now has his own rap at the end of the song, we love.
Well, keep an eye out this week because there may be a video for that rap dropping soon.
Yes.
Oh boy. Exclusive.
Yeah. So keep your eyes peeled for that because the Shudder release is this week, and so I think to commemorate that, we're gonna have a little music video drop. So
nice.
How important is it for like a filmmaker such as yourself to have something like Shudder now? I feel like it's such a great community that they have over there in the movies that they put through. So May 20th, Psycho Goreman comes out.
I love that there is a platform specifically for genre movies like this. Like they were so excited for PG, like they pursued this movie hard, which I really appreciate. Especially like in this streaming era, I feel like some of these companies have like specific algorithms they're catering to, and it's all about those algorithms and not really about like what movie fans want. And with Shudder, it's like I feel like it's run by people that are genre fans and are passionate about this kind of thing and want wanted to basically like create that video store shelf of horror movies.
Yeah, that's what it is.
In a digital format. So yeah, I love it.
Cool.
Sam mentioned a minute ago Maniac Cop, which reminded me. I wanted to ask you, and I'm sure you've been asked before. Would because I was on YouTube. I was watching a lot of your shorts, and originally at the end of Manborg, the Bio Cop. Is there any chance that would ever be a feature? Or did you ever think about doing that?
I mean, people have certainly asked me to do a feature repeatedly for the
Yeah.
past like 9 or 10 years.
It's so good.
But what the example I give everyone is SNL, like they came up with so many great characters, but like how many of those made good movies, you know?
Right.
So
Mhm.
with BioCop, it's like the shtick is funny for 5 minutes in the way that, yeah, like dropping him into PG for the like 3 scenes that he's in, like that works in that moment. But I don't really want to watch 90 minutes of that guy. He's
Gotcha.
a bit of a force of nature, and I think giving him too much like pathos and like backstory is just going to diminish that because it's
Right.
absurd. And I don't know if you can really have 90 minutes of that, like being beaten over the head with a guy
I gotcha.
wanting to shoot himself. Like, oh,
I love that bubbly gore you do on that feature and stuff, and I think you did the effects on Septic Man, I believe, also too.
well, no,
Was that?
people have gone to IMDb and seen my name on the Septic Man crew list.
Mhm.
It was actually Jeff and Jason DeRushi who did the effects on that. They're known as the Brothers Gore, I believe, is their label. But Jeff, who I work with pretty regularly in effects, I actually like. I'm probably going to see him tomorrow. He's over at Masters Effects. Yeah, he asked me one day just to come help out on some Septic Man stuff because it's a very low budget movie. And so yeah, I sculpted a little bit for him. It was maybe a total of 4 hours of working on that movie. Unfortunately, people have now, seen my name on the credit list, and they're like, "Oh, Steve must have done all the effects on this," when it's actually Jeff and Jason did all the effects on set.
I'm sure that
Don't trust IMDb, kids.
Yeah,
I'm,
no,
I'm sure that'll get some eyes on the movie. I watched it. I thought it was great. I thought it was a really funny concept. But also like going through your Instagram, like because I wanted to just see if I could pick something out. You made a head of like Jason from Jason Goes to Hell. Now I am a big Jason Goes to Hell apologist. I think Adam Marcus did a great job. I think one day we should have him on because to me, it took The Hidden. The sci-fi movie The Hidden, as well as like the first Power. So all that body jumping, and out of all like the first 9 Jason movies, the only one that I don't really like to watch is Manhattan. But man, Jason Goes to Hell is great. Are you a fan?
yeah, it's definitely grown on me over the years. I'm trying to remember, like I watched those movies in such a weird order the first time, like as a teenager. Like I think I started with the X, and like then I watched the first one, and then I think I watched 9. So like at that point, like I didn't really know, or no, it was I watched 7 and then 9. So I wasn't like fully like kind of understanding what the franchise was at that point. So I remember just being confused initially, but like watching it,
rightfully so.
yeah. But watching,
Even if you watch them in order, that can happen.
well, yeah, it's a very confusing franchise. But having watched it all the way through a few times, yeah, 9 I definitely have an appreciation for in how weird it is, and it does like it's fitting because it has like the book and the knife in it, but it feels more like an Evil Dead style movie than a Friday the 13th movie.
Well, he said the director said that he made Jason a deadite for the movie. I think he was trying to do
Well,
so
it's also like, is that the only one where Jason like makes noise too? Like in the opening, he's like grunting and stuff, and it's very weird. Like I'm used to him being totally silent, but he's getting shot and he's going like, and it just something about that is way more bothersome than anything else Jason has done in the whole franchise. But I love what a weird movie it is.
Just like you said, once you get to the ninth, he probably looked at it the way you looked at Leprechaun. You're like, I got the 9th one. Let's do something cool.
Yeah, probably. Well, at that point, yeah, it's like, how do we freshen this thing up? And that's when people start getting desperate and going to space and doing all kinds of nonsense. So yeah, body hopping really isn't that big of a stretch. for a night.
But yeah, I mean, there was a couple of credits here that I just wanted to shout out because I really liked the movie Girl House. I thought that was really cool. It was like a slasher movie that had the rapper Slain, who we love.
Okay.
I thought that was.
I did not actually see the movie. I just built some gags for it over at Foreman Dynamics. It's another effect shop in Toronto. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'll trust your review of it. But yeah, another like low budget, I believe, shot in Ottawa movie. So
for me, it was just being a fan of the rapper Slain and watching him in this movie. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's terrible. I have no idea. But like to me, just loving him as a rapper and thinking like, oh, I can't believe that he's in this movie. The same way that I watch Wrong Turn 4. Like I know that you did some work on that. And to me, like so Wrong Turn 1 was good. And it's just one of those movies that just kept cranking out sequels, but they were fucking fun as hell. Like I would watch them because they had great kills from like 2 on.
Yeah, I mean, I liked 2 a lot. I thought that one was super fun. I haven't seen 3 or 5 or 6 or the remake, but
they're up that high now to 6.
Oh no, they were up to like 7.
But
God.
I don't know, that kind of project is my favorite thing, where it's like you just are doing like some numbered sequel in a franchise that like Fox. I remember one of the producers saying like, we'll always make money on these because just the name brand value alone, like you paid $2.4 million to make the movie and you're guaranteed to make like $10 million back. So they just crank them out. But there was also like a weird kind of freedom to it because it was so low budget and schlocky. So yeah, it's like an effects artist's dream to do that kind of thing and just slap a bunch of stuff together and be like, we have no money, but we got a bunch of latex and some,
And you have the name. And so that's funny because I would always wonder, like, as far as like the business side of it, like, yeah, it's like you have this name and it's going to make that return. So then you could use that money into like whatever else that you want to put out. So that's interesting. Yeah. So there was just like a couple of things else that
actually, I don't mean to cut you guys.
Oh yeah.
But like in like 3 minutes, I gotta hop on another thing.
That's fine. Yeah.
100%, man.
I just had. I'll do one last question.
Yeah.
If you could remake a movie, what would it be?
Like a remake, like just totally from the ground up, any movie.
Yep.
I kind of want to remake something shitty. I feel like those are the remakes that need to happen. Is like misguided movies.
Yeah.
I guess this would tie into my answer I usually give of like, what's like a franchise or property you'd want to make a movie out of? But I've always wanted to make a movie out of Doom, and both of those movies were not good. So that would qualify as a remake, I think, because I'd bring Karl Urban back and I'd bring The Rock back to remake the 2006 Doom movie.
Okay.
Just I'll hopefully do it properly this time and have more monsters and guns and actual Doom stuff. And maybe not have a wrestling smackdown at the end. Just my.
Before we let you go real quick, can you say the Day of the Dead TV series you're working on? Can you say anything about that? Status that's in?
I'm not allowed to say much of anything. I think we're supposed to have some kind of panel soon about it. But yeah, I mean, I directed 4 episodes of it and it was super fun. And it's got to kind of do the Leprechaun kind of thing where I just crammed as many effects into it as I could. So
listen, you're the man. You're the man. Thank you so much for doing it. Like you didn't have to do it. You hit me up. You said let's do a longer episode. Thank you so much. We're a huge fan. So that's it.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. It was fun talking.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
I wanna leave the whole world behind me. I wanna go to
dark.